On the subject of children, family is one of the most fundamental aspects of human existence. Many parents who choose to start new families are eager to pass on to their children what they have learned throughout the duration of their own lives. This can even extend into subconscious desires to relive experiences through children, perhaps in attempts to correct some shortcomings perceived in one's own life. The desire to create a new iteration of one's exploration is quite natural. To some extent, this is how life proceeds, with each generation picking up where the last one left off. Not necessarily to recreate an identical path, but to create extensions and deviations of it, seeded with the principles and understandings obtained from the previous generation. Despite the close interconnection between generations, children are obviously not the same as their parents, and difficulty often arises as they begin to express these differences in personality and preference. Though a great many differences between us receive little attention, or are even complementary to each other in positive ways, others have more potential to clash, to oppose, and to repel us from one another. Though the value of difference and diversity is often touted, it always has the potential to create friction when underlying beliefs are seen to be challenged or even threatened. A typical response throughout the world is aversion to difference and diversity, and the same can be true within individual family units. The more pronounced the dissonance between parent and child, the more potential there is for strain to occur within their relationship. Children will likely experience more stress and confusion the more they are discouraged from discovering and freely expressing what is uniquely natural to them. In contrast, the more a child is allowed to discover and freely express, the more stress tends to be experienced by parents, whose patterns and beliefs are usually less flexible than a child's. Parents are usually able to more easily express control as well, which further contributes to a tendency of most adults to discourage and discount the natural inclinations of children to greater or lesser extent. But dealing with differences by resorting to control, despite some potential immediate payoff, is generally not to anyone's greatest benefit. To truly address frictions born out of diversity demands a genuine willingness to become aware of and accept one another's differences, particularly if one wishes relationships to flourish in a close-knit family environment. It is possible to accept differences without ever agreeing with one another, and in some cases without even a great deal of interaction. Many families eventually part ways to large extent, perhaps engaging each other only a few times per year or less. And this is not inherently a bad thing. It can be efficient, for it generates an allowance for differences to be expressed without requiring individuals to address the friction that would likely ensue if more frequent interaction occurred. Nevertheless, such an arrangement of mutual separation is usually not possible for several formative years, in which parent and child are almost forced to coexist in close proximity until the child has developed enough capacity to survive in the world more independently. A great deal has been studied about parent and child relationships during these formative years, in which foundational belief structures are put in place for a child to eventually navigate life on their own. Often parents are unwilling to allow much variance in the direction a child would like to pursue for a variety of reasons, but most of them amount to some general idea that parents know what is best for children better than the children do. Consequently, children are usually expected to follow specific guidelines set up by adults. Some of these are even transmitted to children without an explicit attempt or desire to do so. Some, if not many, of these guiding principles professed by parents are not necessarily ideally suited to the genuine personality and intentions of a child, and are at best principles that resonate well with the parent. However, sometimes these principles don't resonate well with the parent either, but were simply passed down to them when they were children, and thus the cycle is perpetuated from generation to generation. Again, this scenario is not necessarily bad in and of itself. Despite the failure of any belief to perfectly align with a unique individual, all beliefs are acceptable and have provided adequate guiding principles for generations. The experience of contrast between our beliefs and our underlying personalities has itself been valuable. For contrast generates a type of movement and experience that fuels a continuously growing awareness of our desires and preferences, which are eventually fulfilled through the course of mankind's exploration here. The challenge currently is that we've become more and more aware of ourselves and our preferences, and consequently it has become more and more grating to align with belief structures that do not resonate well with us. Individuals that experience this growing self-awareness, however, may find it difficult to shift their beliefs and patterned behaviors due to force of habit on one hand and due to fear on another. For many of these beliefs and behaviors are ingrained in the body in association with perceptions of safety and survival. They are not easily set aside. Your body does not let you easily set them aside. But at the same time, the growing awareness of misalignment can be equally difficult to ignore, and this internal polarity often leads to some sort of personal crisis, manifest physically or psycho-emotionally. Even if these crises appear to be taking place externally, at their roots, these issues are almost always associated with some sort of internal conflict. Just as it is possible, however, to become entrenched in a set of patterned behaviors that are not ideally suited to you, it is also possible to shift into another set of patterns better aligned with your preferences and genuine personality. This is especially true for children. They are usually quite proficient developmentally at doing just this. Most explore alignment with a wide variety of beliefs and behaviors. The ease with which children accomplish this task usually exceeds that of adults, because most adults have essentially crystallized their patterns into more concrete behavior structures. On one hand, this does offer adults a more stable guidance from which to make choices, but on another, it can be more difficult for them to address internal conflict when it does arise. Behaviors and beliefs pertaining to perceptions of survival, as mentioned earlier, can be particularly challenging to address. An example may include how an individual makes a living. Again, youth may have somewhat of an easier time here, due to social norms allowing greater flexibility for young people to make mistakes and explore a variety of career paths, as compared to older individuals who often expect themselves to have a stable career by a certain point in time. The midlife crisis, as it is termed, often relates to a perception that one's survival, or even the survival of one's entire family, is hopelessly dependent upon a career that has become unsatisfying. Such pressure can reach a boiling point in some cases, leading to tumultuous scenarios manifest through breaking down of relationships, drastically altering life directions, or internally manifesting disease. The good news is that individuals can access information within themselves that can be very helpful in navigating and understanding these internal polarities. It is rarely necessary to become entirely aware of the polarizing belief structures. The information contained within the body consciousness is equally valid whether a person manifests a detailed awareness of the underlying issues or not. What is important is simply that an individual become connected and aware of the flow of information being expressed by the body. This can bring to light series of incremental changes in behaviors and expressed beliefs to manifest a realignment with one's expanding preferences and personality, without ever generating traumatic extremes. This may equate simply to subtle perceptual changes of otherwise similar choices and events already taking place. But eventually, even these seemingly subtle alterations translate into significant changes in choices, expressions, and directions in which life unfolds. For a child, this may amount to developing a self-awareness and foundational belief structures that align with his or her genuine personality and natural intentions from the get-go. This process of internal self-evolution can also benefit those around us, children, spouses, friends, and beyond, for the process inherently involves a greater allowance of differences to be expressed, and a recognition of the importance of aligning beliefs and behaviors with your core personality and preferences. It generally requires some dedication on the part of an individual to know thyself. To do so is not primarily an intellectual process, but rather an experiential one, hastened or slowed by your willingness to pay attention to yourself, to what you are truly doing, and to the corresponding communications you and your body are generating. There is an art to genuinely paying attention to oneself and one's communications, but valuable information is continuously available, often delivered by the body directly through senses, feelings, intuitions, and impulses, to name a few. Information is also delivered to you through dreams, imagination, meditation, and so forth. These all offer helpful avenues of information specific to you about what is genuinely to your greatest benefit. One need only commit to listening, interpreting, and trusting the communications coming from within you.